So thank you very much, and very interesting from Stephen. I couldn't actually almost asked you to do this before I have my piece. So router security seen from a router manufacturer perspective. For those of you who don't know who Zyxel is, use this one. Let me just quickly walk you through. We're about 1,500 people in Zyxel, not counting all our manufacturing side at all. But of those 1,500 people, 600 are software R&D engineers. So when I say we're a hardware router manufacturer, it's not so true anymore. We're just as much a software company nowadays as we are a hardware company. We were established almost 3 decades ago as a chipset vendor. We made the best modem chips in the world. Unfortunately, nobody wanted to buy the damn things. So, so we decided to build our own modems to build the best damn modems in the world. And we succeeded in that. And that's pretty much where Zyxel is coming from. So we have an install base of about 100 million devices globally deployed at this point. And around 2/3 of those devices are going through the operator space. So we are very much focusing on service providers. That's our bread and butter. Okay. So what we do is pretty much we do everything, but we do central office equipment all the way to mesh Wi-Fi systems in the home. But the bulk of our business is actually in the access devices, going from all the way from DSL to fiber to 4G and 5G. And pretty much our business is to sell CPE to service providers, stack them high, stack them real high. And we ship out about 15 million devices a year. So with 100 million devices in the field, that gives you an idea. It's about 5 years life cycle of these devices before they get switched. So next, I want to talk about why we should focus on security in routers. And well, in order to do that, let me take you back a couple of years. I'm sure a lot of you noticed the Mirai, and thanks again, Stephen, for bringing. And it's not the car I'm talking about here, right? We had the first very large-scale attack on routers themselves. We hadn't seen that before. There was the IoT Mirai, which attacked a lot of IoT devices all over the place. But we never saw, before this attack, we never saw the routers themselves being attacked. And they're very powerful things. What they did is they attacked sort of a combination of two vulnerabilities in the TR69, the remote management part, and managed to get the router to download a piece of malicious software and then attack each other and propagate this way. And there was more than 3 million routers affected by this. The bad guys claimed that they wanted to build this distributed denial of service botnet and for rent. So basically, they were advertising it that you could rent it for about $50,000 for 30 minutes, and they can attack anyone except Facebook for some reason. They didn't want to attack them. It was primarily low-end routers, and there was 26 different manufacturers affected. So why is that? Why 26 affected by the same thing? And that was because they were mostly running turnkey software on these very low-end platforms. And it was mostly ADSL that was affected. We had a lot of affected customers. It was quite a crisis. And we had a little regional player in the UK. And they had one little telecom shop, and had 1,000 people lined up outside that shop, all the way, around the city. So I would say that it was not very successful, the attack itself. because actually it caused a lot of the routers to crash. Even here in Germany, routers which were not affected or was not successfully affected still crashed because of the sheer scale of hack attempts that came into them. So there was almost like 1 million devices or 1 million people just in Germany not being able to go online. So it was quite a wake-up call for the industry that we now have to face threats against the router itself. Right? So we changed a lot of things in the way that we're looking at securing our devices themselves. But here we're talking about focus on securing the router from being taken over by somebody else. So we do a lot of penetration testing. We have external testing. We have again, from denial of service attacks, we're trying to avoid that, and basically hardening the devices. Another development is that in some of the global, computer emergency response teams around the world, like in US and Europe, are now including router manufacturers in some of their findings, which means we get very early knowledge about what's going on, and we have a chance to fix it before somebody can exploit these things. And then, we used to have customers who would put static administrative passwords on their routers. Putting out 2 million devices in the field that all have the same password that gives you access to everything is not a very good idea, right? And before that, as a manufacturer, well, we didn't suggest it, but it was part of the specifications. We just did as we were told. We don't do that anymore. Or if they insist, at least we have a disclaimer that comes with it, right? Okay. So again, one of the things is the turnkey software from the chipset manufacturers is really just a reference piece of software. It's not supposed to be the thing that you run all the services on. So in Zyxel, we're not using SDK anymore. We did use it in some of the low-end ADSL, but not even that anymore. And there are many reasons. One thing is the security itself. So we can control, let's say, the level of security across the board. We have at least 200, if not 300 different routers, and they all need to have the same level of security on them. So therefore, we want to be independent from the chipset, and we use a number of chipsets where we need to provide the same level of security for the devices themselves, and we also need to be able to transition between different chipsets. And then the other part is to keep up with technology. Like we have 4G, now 5G coming out, G-Fast, we have Wi-Fi 6 or 11AX, and the transition is very, very fast. Therefore, we need let's say a piece of platform software that allows us to embed these new technologies very, very quickly, right? So all in all, with a consistent security on the product itself, is what we are today. But what about the devices behind the router, right? And the number of IoT devices is different numbers in the field, but at least 8 billion devices deployed today. And what about the subscribers or your customers? They think, they rely on your reputation. So I got a router, I got my Wi-Fi from my service provider, I'm safe. Well, what they don't realize is that, what happens when people behind the router goes places that they're not supposed to go. Anybody with a teenager at home would know what I'm talking about here. And so in order to secure the devices behind the router, we needed to do something else. So we needed to take it to a different place. And we started collaborating with F-Secure about 1 year ago. Why? Well, the router itself sits, that's where all the traffic flows to and from the internet, right? So it makes sense. And to implement, let's say the security function for the devices behind the routers on the router itself. And the good news is that some of these new chipsets are very, very powerful, which allows us to run, extra applications, everything from mesh systems to analytics, it was talked about, but also running security on it, right? And the objective of this collaboration was, to provide enhanced security to the subscribers. I mean, some of the most, let's say, asked features by service providers are simple things like, let's say, parental control to protect the kids doing, stuff through the router. So these are one of them, or some of the requests we most often get. And protect those devices behind it. So basically, have a way of looking at the traffic flowing through the router and seeing, is this light bulb behaving like a light bulb is supposed to behave, or what's going on with my dishwasher, right? So, but it also allows service providers. This is one of our major objectives, is to monetize on this, right? Because subscribers are willing to pay for that extra layer of security, in particular parental control, is something that people are willing to pay for. And it allows you as operators to increase the ARPU and actually reduce, the churn by, it gets sticky. So really you should embrace this. So we've been working for about 1 year in getting this. We're there. There's a few implications. As I said, very, very powerful chipsets. However, if you want to do software packet inspection, it's very, very CPU intensive. So you might end up with 30, 40 meg. And nowadays it's like it's a fiber network. So speeds of 1 gig, and people are slaves to they sit on Ookla and test it, and they will call you if they pay for 1 gig and they only get 960, they will call you and say, where's the last 40 meg? So therefore, we cannot have the security function cannot impact the performance of the product itself, and this is where it gets really, really difficult. In Sweden, we even see 10 gig services nowadays. So, but we managed to solve it because F-Secure's, obviously their AI, their expertise, and able to, again, analyze the traffic flows through and see, is this type of device supposed to behave like this? If not, then stop it. But from Zyxel, our software expertise lies sort of in the field between having traffic coming into the router and handing it over to the hardware acceleration in the chipset. And we managed to solve this, and you can see it in the expo here, that we fixed it. Actually, the result is about less than 5% impact on the throughput. And actually, the perceived speed is actually better, because when we notice when we strip out some of these tracking cookies and things like this, you actually see web pages loading faster. So the customer will actually experience, have a better experience using this. So I encourage you to go and see the expo. So I'll leave you with this. I encourage you to turn these threats at this mid-level into revenues and, increase the customer stickiness in the process. Thank you.